This week on Entrepreneurs, we look at the amazing contribution migrant entrepreneurs make to business, particularly in Australia. I'm Jack Delosa, and Entrepreneurs starts now.
This is Entrepreneurs.
Welcome to Entrepreneurs. Tonight we're talking to Migrapreneurs. That's right, migrant entrepreneurs. Joining us tonight are Usman Iftikhar, co-founder of Catalyzer, the startup incubator for migrant entrepreneurs, Anastasia Volkova, co-founder of agri-tech business Fluorosat, and Veronica New, founder of Morris Care Pharmacy. But first up, from our Melbourne studio, we have Sam Bashiri, co-founder of Broadband Solutions. Sam has an incredible story, as you can see up on the screen now. He fled Iran with his mum and his sister when he was just 10 years old, arriving with nothing and learning English from scratch. Today he runs the national business Broadband Solutions, which turns over $25 million a year and employs 30 people. Sam, welcome to Entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Jack.
Sam, tell us more about your journey. I've just sort of touched on your story a little bit in the introduction. Fascinating journey so far.
I guess quite exciting, daunting at the same time, coming to a whole new country,
Yes.
having to learn the language. But look, it's been quite exciting. I guess I came here back in 1989 as a 10-year-old with my mother and sister. And I attended primary school, and then I went through, I guess what most of us children do, through primary school, high school, and then university. And then I guess from there I had a moment where I felt lost, like most of us do. And I had this light bulb moment where I was sitting in the car with my, in front of my mum and dad's house, and I sat there and looked in the mirror, and I started crying because I felt lost and I didn't know what I was doing with my life, like I guess most of us do at that age. I reversed the car out, went to the Centrelink office, applied for a job in IT, and then the rest of the story, I guess, goes on, and I'm here today.
What was the catalyst? You mentioned the moment in the car. Why did that drive you to becoming an entrepreneur?
Look, I think as children and you know, young people, we have a lot of pressure on us in terms of, you know, doing well and going to uni and being successful, and it's quite daunting. And you know, and for me, I was one of those people that you know, I was going through the process, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And back then, IT was quite new, especially the telecommunications industry. And for me, it was really about taking a moment and really being real to myself and thinking about where my life's heading. And, you know, I had that light bulb moment at that moment where I was true to myself, you know, and I just sat there and thought about what I was passionate about, what I was interested in. And I guess I followed that dream of, you know, what I wanted to do, and I started somewhere with it.
That is absolutely amazing, mate. Well done. How did you resource the business in the early years?
Look, I borrowed $1,000 from the bank
Wow.
through my credit card. I took a cash advance out. And for me, you know, it was all about getting the business up and running as lean as I could. So it was about getting a domain name and an email address and a website. You know, I look back now and I realise how terrible my website was back then. But, you know, it was about getting something online, and you know, and just starting a business and generating revenue, and that was the most important. That was my first goal, to generate revenue, and then from there, every time, you know, we generated revenue, it was about putting that money back into the business and allowing the business to grow. So you know, there was never a fancy office. I remember we had the smallest office in the whole building. So the first thing I did was tint the office windows because we were quite embarrassed how small our office was, and we didn't want anyone else to see.
So we're running out of time, but I have to ask you, any advice for aspiring entrepreneurs who are new Australians?
Look, I guess what's really important is follow your passion and don't be afraid, and don't put limits on yourself, because you can achieve anything you set your mind to. So, you know, and I think the key message that I want to get out there is it's persistence. It doesn't mean you have to be smart, brilliant. You just have to be persistent. And if you keep trying, you will definitely get there.
Sam, absolutely incredible story and incredible journey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
Appreciate it, mate. After the break, we chat with two founders who have built businesses in the pharmaceutical and agri-tech space.
You're watching Entrepreneurs. Welcome back to Entrepreneurs.
Welcome back to Entrepreneurs. We are focusing on migrant entrepreneurs this week. Joining me are Veronica Nu, a pharmacist and owner of 2 pharmacies, and Anastasia Volkova. Anastasia is quite literally a rocket scientist. She's also the founder of Fluorosat, a startup that is changing the face of agriculture in this country. Anastasia, tell us about Fluorosat.
Well, Fluorosat is a predictive crop health analytics startup, and what that means is that we can combine satellite imagery with yield data, with farm records, to actually figure out how to grow crops with less inputs, less fertilizer, less water. And what we're trying to do is make agriculture more sustainable, but allowing farmers get access to that information, and ultimately the sustainability for environment is also one of the benefits here.
And the purpose of this business is something that's really at your heart. Talk to us about the purpose and what was the catalyst for you to start on this journey.
Yeah, so I guess the mission of Fluorosat is actually to make sure that our kids will have a well to live in and food to eat. Right. My background is aerospace, as you mentioned. And aerospace is a bit of a polluting industry, whilst agriculture is actually the industry that supports us all. So I wanted to apply my skills in remote sensing, satellite imagery, and data analytics, machine learning to something that was actually helpful for the world.
You're originally from Ukraine. What's your migration story?
I came here to start my PhD, which I finished. Yeah. But before coming to Australia, I actually worked in Western Europe and in the US and had a look around and figured that I actually wanted a bit of a softer, nicer, more approachable country to live in. And Australia was the one. So this is where I've chosen to be for my PhD, and this is where I started my company.
Well done. How have you found Australia so far as an ecosystem to build a thriving startup?
Look, this is definitely an ecosystem that we support as we're building the startup, because it's quite a young ecosystem. It's a young ecosystem of venture capital, of startups, of accelerators and incubators. It's something we all support, and growing that ecosystem is something that I think Australians can be a little bit better in, because we don't need to compete between the states. We can collaborate, and I think this is where it's going. Collaboration.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Anastasia, and you're obviously hanging around for a discussion with the rest of the episode. Veronica, welcome to Entrepreneurs.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Now, your early childhood in Cambodia was actually quite traumatic. Talk to us about that.
At the time, the country was in the grip of civil war. There was a group called Khmer Rouge who were very nationalistic. They didn't like people that didn't fit into their idea of what the proper Cambodian was. And so by that, they meant people who were quite dark, people who were farmers, people who had a higher education, who were doctors, teachers, that sort of thing they didn't like. And unfortunately, my family ticked all of those boxes. So those of us who could became refugees. We escaped, and I've been through now several different countries and several different refugee camps in order to make it to Australia in the early 90s. Unfortunately, any of my family that didn't escape with us, none of them survived. So we're very fortunate to have come to Australia and be taken in by such a generous place.
Oh my, that is truly amazing. So today you own 2 pharmacies.
I do.
Like that's 2 worlds apart, obviously, and
very,
literally.
very different.
How did you go from that background and everything that you experienced to now being the proud owner of a successful business and 2 pharmacies?
I think when you come to a country like Australia and you are given those opportunities through education, and you have that background of knowing what it's like to really have nothing, it becomes really, really important to you to be able to give back to the community and the people that took you in and gave you that chance. And as I was working in pharmacy, I was travelling around regional Australia and all over Sydney and the Hunter Valley and Newcastle, places like that, and I realised that pharmacy is such an organic way of helping people. It's not formal. You don't have to wait an appointment or book months in ahead. If people need help, they can come to you and you can help them straight away. And I love it. It's very, very rewarding. It's such a wonderful way to give back.
What's been the most challenging part of your journey?
The most challenging part would probably have been actually living in poverty, living in abject poverty in Cabramatta back in the day, which had its own reputation. When we first got here, even though my parents are doctors by trade back in Cambodia, their qualifications are not recognised here. So my dad was doing factory work, my mum was sewing, there was my brother and sister who were born here, there was all 5 of us sleeping in 2 beds in 1 room. You know, it was a great struggle, but luckily, because Australia Australia has this wonderful education system that can bring you up through it. We were just fortunate enough to have that work ethic. We just have to go for it and try to make something of yourselves. And here I am, very, very lucky indeed.
Yeah, and very, very capable by the sounds of things. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur myself, and we entrepreneurs often talk about how it's a really difficult path. Do you think that your background and everything you endured pre-starting your own business gave you a perspective, and so relatively speaking, building a business might have been the least difficult thing you've had to navigate in your life?
I wouldn't say that it's the least difficult thing I've ever had to navigate in my life, but absolutely that background is really, really helpful. When you come from a place or a background where there's no safety net, there's no social welfare, if you're out of work, you just have no money, that's it. It's a really strong motivation for you have to make it, you know. So it gives you that extra boost of what can you do to make it better? How can you improve your situation? You come home at night and you're thinking about what can I do to improve my lot? And because I'm doing better, then I can carry people with me, my family who's come with me, or other people that you know who have arrived in the same situation. You want to bring them up with you and give everyone that chance.
What's the key message? I'll open this question to both of you, Anastasia and Veronica. What's the key message you would each have for new Australians who have come to this country, particularly from adverse backgrounds, who are looking to become entrepreneurs?
Be brave, work hard. You absolutely can do it. There are plenty of people out there who want you to do well and will do their best to support you if you can find the right services. You just have to sometimes put your head down and go for it, and don't let the naysayers bring you down. I
love it. Anastasia, quickly before we go to break.
I suggest that what Veronica said was quite right, and I think it's not just about the hard work, it's about the tenacity and perseverance, and you know, if you stick to what you know and you'll stick through it, you'll get there.
This is a deeply profound and inspiring conversation. Time for a break. When we return, we are joined by the man who is credited with coining the term migrapreneur. Stick around.
You're watching Entrepreneurs. Welcome back to Entrepreneurs.
Welcome back to Entrepreneurs. We are discussing migrapreneurs with Cambodian-Australian Veronica New and Ukraine-born Anastasia Volkova, and the founder of Catalyzer, a startup accelerator for migrant entrepreneurs, Usman Iftikhar. Usman, firstly, how is Catalyzer different to most incubators out there?
Absolutely. So, firstly, thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being here.
Catalyzer is different because its focus is on migrant and refugee entrepreneurs, whereas a lot of other incubators are focused on a particular technology, or say, for example, software or hardware, whereas here we focus on migrants and refugees because we think that they can be resilient and they can use their experience as a migrant or refugee to start their own business in Australia.
And Usman, I understand that's a story and a purpose that's near and dear to your heart. Talk to us about your story and how that connects in with the heartbeat of Catalyzer.
I came to Australia in 2013 and I had a background in engineering from Pakistan. I did a master's here and then tried to find employment but just couldn't find anything meaningful. So I was doing a lot of casual work, driving an Uber, working at 7-Eleven, and you would have seen a lot of other similar people doing that. And so I decided I was just really fed up with that life and decided I wanted to do something different and wanted to start a business. Now that insight led me to thinking, if I want to do that, surely there are a lot of other migrants and refugees who would also want to do that as well. And so did some research, found 60% of migrants and refugees who come here either unemployed or underemployed in the sort of first 5 years of being in Australia, which is really shocking. And that led me to sort of co-found Catalyzer to help them through this incubator program.
That is absolutely incredible. When they come into the incubator, what are the typical challenges that you're helping them to navigate in order to start and build a successful business?
So for a normal person, when I say normal person, someone who's born up and brought up in Australia, they have particular challenges of, like looking for funding and being able to get customers and so on. But for us, we have additional challenges like language and also understanding the culture and navigating the culture. So from small things like how do you set up a meeting, just time and the fact that you need to turn up on time and things like that, all the way to talking to VCs, building networks, connections, getting the right kind of mentoring as well, and almost unlearning a lot of the things that you've learned in your own country, because that's real. Like Australia works differently, and to be able to sort of succeed here, you need to think a bit differently as well.
Usman, I'm incredibly interested. Can you describe some of the people that you're supporting and some of the outcomes that we're seeing?
Absolutely. So we have supported about 100 migrapreneurs in the last couple of years.
Wow.
And they go from small business who want to start a food business from their own country of origin to a space startup similar to what Anastasia's doing.
Anastasia's not a graduate, is she? Of Catalyzer?
Not yet.
No. We've got to get her in.
But we do have a space startup, AI startup, people who are developing new kind of watches, wrist watches in different languages, and really coming with different and interesting ideas that haven't been explored before.
A question for the panel. We were talking during the break. Are people who migrate more likely to look for a stable job, or do we think they're likely more of a risk taker and naturally steered toward a path of entrepreneurship? What do you think?
I think that because of some of the challenges that Usman mentioned, it's much more realistic an option for you to go into business for yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's a well-known old saw that you can send out as many resumes as you like with a foreign name. If you don't have an English-sounding name on it, you're very unlikely to get a call back. So all these little things really are going to push you in that direction. And if you're the sort of person who's willing to uproot yourself from another country, come to Australia, you're already someone who's probably a bit more of a risk taker. You're not so averse to making that final leap. So it becomes just a natural progression of that.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to Ruslan Kogan, the founder of Kogan.com, and he was saying that starting a business isn't dissimilar to being a migrant. You're leaving somewhere that you know and somewhere that's comfortable, and you're taking this risky journey to go somewhere that you may not even reach and you don't really know much about it before you get there.
Certainly.
What's your view, Anastasia? Is there a correlation between migration and steering towards entrepreneurship?
I would say so. And actually, Florida employs a lot of migrants, a lot of people who came here to get their PhDs, to get their jobs, to get their qualifications here because they were looking for a better life. And why so? Because they actually got out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
They made it here. They made all of the efforts on the way here to make it happen into the new life and start something new. I think entrepreneurs are just like that because you've seen them roaming the world. They're taking their chances. They're choosing where to go and where to live, and they're really working hard on making it happen. Where they even entering the country is an entrepreneurial pursuit in itself.
Yeah.
So they've managed to do that. They certainly will be good in their job.
Absolutely. Usman, you mentioned underemployment and unemployment. Do those kind of conditions point someone towards starting their own business?
Absolutely, and we've got the data as well. So CGU ran this report last year on migrant small businesses and found 83% of migrant small business owners in Australia did not have a business back home. That's a really large number of people. And 35% of Australian small business owners are sort of first-generation migrants and refugees, whereas there's only 28% of us who are sort of born outside of Australia. So you can already see that from the data that that's what's being represented. And as like fellow panelists are saying, that there are some sort of preconditions that make you become a migrant that also help you become a successful entrepreneur as well.
Absolutely. And I suppose it's probably equally about encouraging migrant entrepreneurship, but also it sounds like people that migrate to Australia are already quite motivated and capable to do something of themselves. So should we be doing more to help enable more entrepreneurship and interrupt people with the kind of message that you've got a catalyzer, which is you can do it and here's a pathway that can help? Should we be doing more?
Absolutely. I think we should be doing a lot more because I think that's still pretty dormant. We've got a lot of international students, for example, coming to Australia, and I think we can really capture that. You often see these stories about international students coming to Australia, then going to a different country and then creating something new, solar panels, etc. Whereas I think we can really capture that value here if we create the right sort of pathways for them.
Anastasia, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea and you can capture that. But actually, I think creating the environment in which they can be supported, creating incubators and accelerators where they actually can learn all the skills. They have the tenacity, the drive, the rigor, but they don't necessarily, as Usman said, have the right language of the BD talk, of the business development. They don't know how to nourish their customers through the customer success. That's something that an accelerator, an incubator, business-driven environment can really support in. So that's definitely a must because an entrepreneur is not born a business person for their vertical or for their horizontal type of business. They're born driven.
Absolutely. Veronica, what do you think we can do to enable more entrepreneurship in migrant entrepreneurs?
I think a lot of it is about connecting people to the right services, providing that hub, which is definitely something that Usman is already addressing in a very worthy way. I think also people may not realise how much Australian-born people have for granted that migrants coming here do not. People who grow up here, they tend to have a support network already in place. They've got family they can fall back on. There's a family accountant maybe, or a lawyer. They have people that can act as guarantors at the bank. Something as simple as when you're working back late, there's someone to mind the kids. None of that stuff is a given for people who come to Australia, sometimes in difficult circumstances. So it's something we need to be aware of as well and support them to move past these challenges.
I couldn't agree more. I think we truly underestimate the challenges that you mentioned, particularly in those contexts. Final words, team. What's a number one piece of advice or top tips for people that are watching, thinking about building their business who are first-generation migrants? Usman?
I think that they should give it a go. So I personally have sort of found that Australia is a land of opportunity. There's a lot of things you can do, and you need to have that grit, you need to have the perseverance to go out there and do stuff. And I think we do have a lot of support available. So definitely us, we at Catalyzer, we can definitely help you, but there's a lot of other organisations, incubators, accelerators, that you can go to, that you can ask help. And I think that's sort of the other piece. A lot of people generally don't want to ask help. Sometimes it's cultural, sometimes there's some other reasons. So really ask for help and ask for coaching, because I think that's something that can really help you.
Yeah, good stuff. Anastasia, we touched on this before, but any final words?
Yes, I would say find your special gift, find what makes you different, find what you're bringing into this environment and really embrace it, really put work into it, because this is something that the new country, new world will appreciate. You're different. Play into that strength.
I love it. Thank you. Veronica, final words.
Don't be discouraged, persevere. You will fall down, expect it, and then when you do, you just have to get back up and keep on going. You're bringing something very valuable. You're bringing to Australia another way of looking at the same problems. That's a very, very valuable thing.
We're fortunate we get to talk to a lot of amazing people on this show, but this has been a particularly inspiring conversation. Thank you all so much for coming on and bravely sharing your stories. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it for Entrepreneurs Tonight. Next week we have a very special show exploring how entrepreneurship is helping those in the prison system to transform their lives. An amazing panel with inspiring stories. You could watch us anytime on Foxtel Go and the catch-up section of yourmoney.com.au. I'm Jack Delosa. Good night.